Hey, welcome back to week 4 of the SNS College Football Podcast. As you can see, I'm by myself on camera this time, so you get to deal with my ugly mug. But I do have Addison and Dave from Houston on the. We're gonna call this the Instapath Hotline. Is that right, Tulman? I can't remember what your company's name is.
Yeah, it's the Instapath hotline.
Yeah,
We evaluate your cancer just as fast as we connect you to our phones.
I like that.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah, I like that. I like that quite a bit. This podcast, let's go through our sponsors real quick. It's also brought to you by ArchCityPLO.com. If you're looking to improve your poker games, I do play and instruct that, so go ahead and visit that site. Addison, you got any sponsors?
I don't have sponsors yet. I mean, we're working on the brewery. It doesn't have a name yet.
That's right.
It doesn't exist yet, except out of my parents' basement, really. But eventually, we'll have brewery sponsorship.
Yeah, because we'll
take name suggestions on the comments.
Yeah. You guys need to put in the comment section. We need some name suggestions for the new brewery. So yeah, let's get right into it though. So same as usual, if you haven't seen the pod before, we're gonna recap last week's premier games that we previewed the week before. We're gonna recap some bets, some winner and losers for the week. That usually consists of maybe players, coaches, programs in general. Tennessee, we're looking at you mainly as a loser this week, but we'll get into that. There'll be more. Conspiracy Corner segment. I believe that has to do with Tennessee also, doesn't it, Dave?
Yep.
Awesome. Yep.
In the middle, when we get to losers and Conspiracy Corner, there's going to be a lot of Tennessee talk.
Yeah, deservedly so. And then we're going to get into our week 3. I think I said it was week 4. I mean, this is week 3 of the pod. So, yeah. Our week 3 preview is going to be UNC at Wake. It's going to be a Friday night game. Wake Forest loves Friday night games. It's really strange. And then, but a couple 2-0 teams that might surprise the casual college football fan. I know UNC, I think they surprise even us more diehard fans. They've surprised us so far this year. But we'll get into the battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy also. We got Iowa at Iowa State. Always seems to be like a pretty interesting game. When we get into that, we'll see. And then our week 3 bets and leans. So, Addison, you know the deal, tradition. Let's start with Texas A&M at Clemson. Go ahead with your thoughts on that game. Anything that surprised you, or did it go pretty much as you thought it would?
Pretty defensive game. You had Clemson pretty much shut down A&M. Very end, A&M got a garbage touchdown that actually got them to cover, so that was probably disappointing to a lot of people.
Yeah, the Clemson doctors.
Yeah, I thought Clemson's D was really impressive. A&M played pretty solid on defense, too. You know, they held Clemson to 24 points, but, you know, with A&M getting completely shut down, they weren't really ever in the game.
Right.
Trevor Lawrence, last week, not a great game from him. A little better this week. He's still not playing as well as we expected him to this year. And I forget what, Etienne's numbers were. I think that A&M did a pretty good job on him, too, but yeah, Clemson's defense was really the story of the game, I thought.
Yeah, it's kind of scary if they're going to be that good defensively. I think A&M, I thought both teams would put up more points. That actually was to me, that was the most surprising part, was A&M's defense. I thought they really held strong and did a lot better job than I thought they would. But I think Clemson, I mean, Dave didn't. I don't know how much of the game you watched it. To me, it felt like Clemson was just never in danger, though, right?
Yeah, that's like I had the game on for pretty much the entire game, but it just wasn't that interesting to watch. So after Clemson jumped out, I think 24-3, it was 24-3 for pretty much the entire second half. So a credit to both of the defenses for holding strong in the second half. What really impressed me about Clemson in this game, aside from what we've already said about the defense, was I know that Trevor Lawrence didn't have the greatest statistical game, but some of the throws that he made were like off the charts, ridiculously good, like into tight windows and very, very like high level NFL throws. Fortunately, you can do that when you have receivers with the catch radius like he has.
Yeah.
So not that fun to watch, but a very, very solid win for Clemson, and you see why they're ranked number 1 and can continue dominance this year.
For sure. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I think, that probably was going to be their hardest game until what we assume is the playoff, right?
We think the ACC is trash, so.
Right. I mean, who do they play that's going to be as good as A&M?
Not Syracuse.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we'll get into that.
Unless UNC keeps winning.
Yeah, we're gonna get into them, and that's a good teaser. We're gonna talk about UNC a little bit. But yeah, so we'll move on to a game that I think we agree was definitely a lot more entertaining. LSU at Texas. I mean, by all accounts, a very entertaining game. Both teams played their asses off. LSU was losing guys left and right due to apparently dehydration, although Texas wasn't. Dave, I'll start with you with this one since it's kind of your adopted team down there when you were, in New Orleans. But your initial thoughts on that game? I know you and I had that as our best bets. How did you think both teams played, and how do you feel about both of them moving forward the rest of the year?
So I thought LSU looked better, and when you look at the statistics, I mean, I think that bears it out. I think LSU around 8 yards per play. Texas, who just from the eye test looked like they had difficulty generating explosive plays, especially earlier on in the game. I think their yards per play was like somewhere in the 5 to 6 range. So I was surprised that LSU's defense struggled a little bit in the second half and did end up giving up some big plays and allowed Sam Ehlinger to make some plays. But overall, I thought LSU looked like a very, very good team. Joe Burrow had a monster game and was making some gigantic throws. Teaser for who my winner of the week might be
for sure.
In terms of a player. But I think that LSU is a top-tier team this year. I think they played like it. I think they gave up a little bit, maybe tired. Look, I've lived in both places. I've lived a little bit, spent a lot of time in Austin, and I've lived a long time in New Orleans. There's a big difference between 100 degrees dry heat, like how you keep your body healthy and going good, and 95 degrees humid heat. And I think that might have taken its toll a little bit on the LSU players getting in that dry 100-degree heat at night.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, you've either lived and or spent a lot of time down there, so I think you have a pretty good gauge on that type of thing. Addison, your thoughts on that game, and same question, how do you feel about both those teams moving forward the rest of the year?
Well, just one more thing about the heat in that game. I heard that the Texas visiting locker room is not air conditioned.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Smart.
Yeah, I know it really is. But the second half, it seemed like every play LSU was losing guys. So, it was taking a toll. The end result, LSU winning by 7. Not really a surprise, but the way the game played out was definitely very surprising. I wasn't expecting a shootout. Both quarterbacks played lights out. Joe Burrow had like the Heisman performance of the week, I'd say. It was the second highest passing game in LSU history, I guess. Do you know who number 1 is?
In our lifetime, I couldn't tell you.
How about Rohan Davey?
Yeah, Rohan Davey.
Oh, wow.
Well, maybe that was Addison who asked it.
I had a feeling Tulman would get that, yeah. But, yeah, anyway. Yeah, Burrow was incredible. He was making some NFL throws. I just thought it was wild how both these teams weren't even trying to run the ball. They realized that, the passing game could not be stopped. Like, when you think of these programs, especially LSU, you don't think of just throwing every down. like even on first down, like they weren't even trying to run the ball in the second half, even with the lead. But that's how good Joe Burrow was in this game, and the receivers. Like they had 3 receivers go over 100 yards.
Yeah, we actually, I think that's an important point for LSU's outlook for the rest of the season. I think the last couple years we've kind of bashed LSU and given them a hard time for not having the skill players, around the quarterback position. But now Terrace Marshall, Jamar Chase, those dudes are nasty. I mean, that's a very, very skilled receiving core right now.
Yeah. So general takeaways for both teams, just LSU, the way that offense looked is really scary. So, they're every bit as good as we thought they were, it looks like, going into the year. As far as Texas, the positive for them is that if their offense can keep producing like explosive plays like that, which they lacked last year, then that could go really well for them in Big 12 play. One problem is, though, I think they're still too heavily reliant on Ellinger. Like, they have no running backs, and they like to run him like a fullback, and if he gets hurt, then, that's going to be big problems for Texas. But, I thought both teams looked good. Texas definitely had their opportunities. Like, the first half, they were on the 1-yard line twice, and they came away with no points. They got stopped on 4th down both times. So Texas played really well. They had chances. LSU's just, the better team. So I didn't think it would be easy because, we've dogged Texas a little bit, but, a team as talented as them playing at home, you expect it to be tough. But, a lot of credit to LSU for pulling out the win.
Yeah, I mean, you guys make good points. I give both those teams a lot of credit for how they played. And like you said, Addison, we've dogged Texas for about 3 years, and I think rightfully so. And we've dogged the Big 12 in general, but they played hard, and not that a lot of teams don't most weekends, but like you said, they had their chances. I agree with you. I think that they've got to find some backs, and their offensive line needs to generate a little bit more surge up front. I think that 18-play drive that they had to start that, I think it was their first drive to start or maybe it was their second one, whenever, in the second half. I think that's what Herman's looking for, is because he knows he's got these really young corners that were just getting eaten alive by LSU's. We talked about their trio of receivers, Jefferson, Marshall, Chase. I mean, these guys are freaks. And, I think on the other side of the ball too, since we talked about all the positives, I guess I'll be the guy that brings in a little bit of the negative. But I don't know about you guys. If I'm an LSU fan, I am a little bit concerned about, this is the second straight year that they're not really moving guys on the line of scrimmage. Offensive lines, I felt like they struggled to generate any kind of run game, which in this game it didn't matter. I think Coach O and that offensive staff, they made the right decision just to go straight, just air raid. They knew Texas couldn't stop them, but I think in games where they're going to be playing better defenses in the SEC, I think, than Texas, and I think they're going to have to be able to run the ball. They're going to have to generate some kind of run, at least enough to keep it balanced. It doesn't have to be amazing if they can throw the ball like that. But I'm not as concerned about their defense. I really do feel like Texas has a good offense. Ellinger played really well. They've got good athletes. I think LSU and Texas both got tired, and I think that was really more the reason that both schools just could light up the scoreboard that night. But moving forward, I like what I saw out of Texas. I think they're going to give everybody they play hell. I mean, I think they can beat Oklahoma. They're going to have to outscore them, and I can't see Texas stopping really anybody. But, LSU, we've talked about this. LSU hasn't been able to beat Bama because they've been too conservative. They haven't utilized their playmakers, and now that they have, Joe Brady in there, they've got a modern passing scheme. Maybe they've got a shot now, but I really would like to see a little bit more from them on both sides of the line, to be honest. It's a little weird to me that LSU wasn't completely dominant in the trenches because I knew they weren't as good last year on the line. I thought this year that would be well improved with all the experience they brought back, but I didn't see a whole lot of improvement, especially on the O line. But like we said, they're utilizing their weapons. I think it's for the better, but definitely a team that's going to be both teams. I think are going to be pretty dangerous moving forward. So you guys got any final thoughts, or do we want to move on to our to our week 2 bets, which I know we're not super thrilled about talking about, but
let's just own it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so week 2, we're gonna recap some bets. We didn't do super well at all as a podcast, but we did hit some bets that we had a lot more units on. That's why if you guys are watching this, you're trying to get the betting angle, you need to allocate more units to your more confident bets. And that's going to help even everything out. That helps you beat the juice. But yeah, we'll start, I guess, going from left to right. Same thing as before, if you guys have watched the pod. We're going to give 1 to 2 really good bets that came through, 1 to 2 that really did not work out, and go from there. So I guess I'll start with Corey's. He had, a couple of his good ones. He had Missouri minus 11 versus West Virginia. He and I both got that last Sunday. Really early line that jumped out to 14. West Virginia is bad. That could be an auto bet against team this year, possibly. Missouri, though, coming off of a bad loss at Wyoming, they did what we thought they would do, so he capitalized on that. I know he was also big on LSU at Texas, so he got that one. I think he had a couple bad bets as far as he had Syracuse minus 2 against Maryland. That didn't work out, obviously. A couple others. He had Washington minus 13.5. They lost on the field to Cal. So not a great week for him, but we usually bounce back pretty hard. Steele, he had couple pretty good ones. He had Purdue minus 7 versus Vanderbilt. They won 42-24. They looked pretty impressive in that game. I think some of his worst ones. He had UC going into the shoe plus 17. Ohio State beat the snot out of Cincinnati, so that bet did not work out. Addison, you're next if you want to give a couple of your really good ones, a couple of your bad ones.
All right, well, I just want to point out that last year I think we got off to a slow start too.
Yeah.
So we're shaking the rust off here.
Yeah.
It'll get better.
I think we're kind of excited that college football's back, and especially like me, Corey, we're like volume shooting here, like Allen Iverson or something. So
I totally agree. After a good start and excitement about college football being back.
Right.
Later in the week, I looked at my bets and I was like, how the fuck do I have like 10 bets? Because I wasn't even like that confident in some of these, but I just ended up pulling the trigger on them anyway. So
yeah, I mean, I had 17 and I was confident in like 3. So
yeah, so we'll clean that up.
Yeah.
But anyway, the bets. My best bet of the week was Cal plus 14. They ended up straight up beating Washington.
Yeah.
Last year, Cal, with their strong defense, they were able to keep a lot of games close, especially late in the year. And that, pretty much their formula continued into, the start of this year too. So that was my best bet. That game also, by the way, went until 4 a.m., which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
They had a weather delay. I was trying to watch it at it was halftime at 2 a.m. and I had to go to bed.
Yeah.
I just kind of passed out while watching it. But
right.
Let's see. There's a lot to choose from for worst bet. So what was that Wisconsin final?
61-0.
61-0. Yeah, plus 35. Central Michigan plus 35. That wasn't even close, even with that many points.
Yep,
so,
not good.
Arkansas plus 7. That series had been close every year for a while now, but they got blown out by another not great team. So Arkansas looks pretty bad right now. And for the second week in a row, this isn't a bet that I made, but I regretted not making a bet on Maryland. I thought about it both weeks, and then once again, Terror gets crushed, and now as a result, next week I'm betting them. So.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I guess I'll go real quick. Two of my better ones that weren't already mentioned. I had Coastal Carolina plus 7.5 at Kansas. They won on the field. Also had UCLA, San Diego State under 47. I told these guys earlier in the week that game was going to be in the 30s. They didn't listen to me and they didn't book it. They should have. The game was in the 30s. DTR for UCLA, he is absolute trash. We're going to talk about him a little bit when we get to our week 3 bets because I might be going against him again. But Tulman, you want to give a couple of yours real quick and then we'll move on to the next segment?
Sure. I had many of the losers that have already been mentioned, and of course, my best bet LSU did win. But talk about one interesting, turned out to be a good bet. I felt really confident about it. Was the Army Michigan under 48.5, and I thought it was a fantastic bet because it was, 28 points in regulation.
Right.
But then we go to overtime. And I was getting real nervous because I thought I had completely nailed the bet, and turns out the way that they played it ended up working out. Somehow that the right amount of scores and field goals missed locked the under, which was nice.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about a bad bet that we thought was a good bet, and Corey and I can pull out our little tiny violins about Boise State covering against Marshall, having outgained them, having doubled, outgained them probably by twofold, and being inside the 10s 3 times and not able to score once, so they only won 14-7. So that was just a bad start to the week on a Friday night, and it didn't get better from there.
Yeah, definitely that is one of those right side wrong results, which those can happen. And it's going to work the other way sometimes as well. I think you and I can say we got pretty lucky that Nebraska and Colorado ended up going over. That ended up fucking Addison's Nebraska bet, but
that was a miracle.
Yeah.
Overtime.
Right. Ends up happening though. So yeah, we didn't have a great week. We're shaking the rust off. Won't be as much volume.
That Boise one sucked because. They dominated. They just couldn't score. They couldn't finish in the red zone, really.
Yeah, I mean, I would say we had some bad bets. I would say to start this year, we're running a little bit below EV, though. We should have 9 more wins from Oregon, Northwestern, and Boise. But I think those will,
that Army one, if that had gone over,
that would have been bad. Yeah, that would have been bad. But all right, well, we'll move.
The way that played out, I thought that there was no way we were going to stay under there, but that fumble by Army ended up saving that bet for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of sad that Army lost. At that point, I was rooting for them, but at least it kept the under intact.
For sure, yeah. All right, well, we'll move on to our week 2 winners and losers. And Addison, I'll start with you for your winners. Just go ahead and list them off whenever you're ready.
I just got a lot of losers.
Okay.
Go around and talk about all these programs that just embarrassed themselves this past weekend.
Yeah,
Let's get winners out of the way real quick.
You guys pick your winners.
I'll give a couple winners.
Yeah, go ahead, T.
Okay. Clemson defensive line, because we weren't sure if they were going to be able to replace that production that they lost from last year, and they look pretty damn good. And then my other huge winner is Joe Burrow, who played fantastic in prime time. Very, very impressive. Probably now in the Heisman race.
Yeah. I think he's everybody's winner this week. He played so well. I'll give some winners. You guys might have to help me out. This Slovis, what's his first name, Addison?
Keaton Slovis.
That's right, yeah. Keaton Slovis, his first start as, I believe, a true freshman for USC, playing at home against Stanford. I think there was definitely some speculation as far as, wondering how well he was going to play stepping in for JT Daniels. But he looked really, really good just in that game alone. Small sample size, but the moment didn't look too big for him. He took advantage of USC's really good wide receiver core. So might be interested. I'm kind of curious to see how he does against BYU. I think BYU's a pretty decent defensive test for him. Couple of coaches, Mel Tucker, pulled out a win at Colorado. He's been, I think, regarded as a pretty solid coach for a long time, and is finally getting his first shot at a head coaching gig. So congrats to him for pulling out that win in what used to be that old Big 12 and even Big 8 rivalry between Nebraska and Colorado. Joe Brady, I mean, we talked about Joey Burrow, LSU bringing over Joe Brady from the New Orleans Saints. He was, I think, the biggest winner of that night. I can't see him not getting some kind of gig after this year based on how LSU looks completely transformed, as if they have been playing in this kind of offense for years. He's done wonders for them, and he's going to get some kind of job next year, I think. And then Coastal Carolina. I mentioned them in the bets, the betting recap. Their first Power 5 win. Sorry, Tulman. I know that hurts your total for Kansas, but Marshawn Lattimore.
Yeah, we're in trouble now, Kansas. I was counting on those first two.
Yeah. But yeah, Coastal Carolina, their first win against a Power 5 opponent, if we really want to call Kansas a Power 5 opponent. But congrats to them. So, Addison, go ahead. I know this is your segment with the losers. Go ahead and start crushing skulls there.
All right. I'll just throw out a few winners real quick. Maryland, they're in the top 25 now for first time in I don't know how long.
Yeah.
First time since Vernon Davis.
Yeah. UNC 2-0. Big surprise. I mean, they've actually beat two decent teams, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, they're not like FCS teams. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They're teams with, pulses, I guess.
Sure.
And Justin Fields looked really good this weekend, too.
Yeah, I was going to mention Fields. Everyone was talking about him going against a real defense, and, how would he look? I tell you what, I would say that these guys would probably agree that especially Addison, I'm pretty hard on Ohio State. I think I probably could seem annoyingly unbiased, but I just try to call it how I see it as much as I can. But if Fields can look, if he can improve upon what he's already done, especially against a Cincy defense that I think is definitely respectable, Ohio State could be really dangerous at the end of the year. He looks like the real deal. Georgia fans, you're full of shit. There's no way that he's as bad, clearly, as you guys claimed he was. I just think we have better coaches for quarterbacks that are getting the best out of his talent. And, not that I don't think Fromm wouldn't be good for us. I think Jake Fromm would be amazing under Ryan Day, but you guys clearly don't know what the hell you're talking about. So Fields looks really good through obviously 2 weeks, but like we said, Cincy, respectable defense. I agree he should be a winner. I thought he looked really good. Addison, go ahead. Give me some losers.
All right. Just trying to decide who to go for first. I'm going to say Michigan's new and improved offense. The first 2 weeks of the season, we were questioning how different it would actually look. Everyone's saying it's going to be spread, it's going to be totally different. They're finally going to, evolve offensively, and I'm not seeing it so far. Maybe it'll change over the course of the season, but it looks kind of shitty right now. And they don't have much of a running game at all.
Addison, their offensive line's not very good, is it?
Yeah, I don't think so, and I don't think they have a lot of talent in the backfield anyway. So
yeah,
they could be, and I don't think really Shea Patterson is good enough to carry the load on that team.
Do you think McCaffrey should start?
He surprisingly only played one snap this past week. Maybe because I thought Harbaugh wanted to play him more, but I don't know. Maybe he got a little worried with the game being close and everything. Didn't want to mess around with that or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just don't think Shea is as good as a lot of people think he is.
Yeah, I think he's too inconsistent. I think he misses big throws and big moments way too often for my liking, and I think he just has a tendency to turn it over too much. I agree with you. I didn't mean to cut into your time there with that, but Michigan It's funny because I have Michigan as my main loser, even though they won the game.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. We talked about Gaddis was a big story in the offseason coming to Michigan, and we all thought that we didn't know 100% what to expect, but we did think it was probably for the better. But here's the thing. I think even just through 2 weeks now, like we said, it's a small sample, but I think we know at Alabama last year who really was running the offense, and that's Mike Locksley, who's at Maryland.
Yeah.
I think Michigan they are running like spread formations, but they have the same philosophy. They're pounding running backs into defensive lines that are owning their offensive line. And it makes no sense to me. And to be honest, through 2 weeks right now, I think Michigan's the fourth best team in that division. And you could argue that Maryland could be better.
Yeah, if you look at Michigan's schedule coming up, like it's really tough. You could see like a loss.
Oh, I think 3 to 4 losses possible.
Unless they get things turned around.
Right.
But, Anyway,
Go ahead.
Do we have anything else did you have anything else to add on Michigan?
No. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was done with that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can always crush them, but we can move on.
All right.
Yeah.
Time to crush Nebraska. Can I crush Nebraska?
Go for it.
Yeah, kick Nebraska off because that's definitely one of them.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and crush Nebraska. You were up 17-0. I thought playing really well, and for the first time in like maybe since after for the first time since Bo Pelini, I thought that their defensive line was actually looking pretty good, and all of a sudden they start giving up monster plays. They're on the road with 70% of their fans there, and I thought things were looking pretty good. And it was a combination of horrible line play, just atrocious secondary play, letting Colorado gash you, and coaching. You end up going to overtime and losing in overtime to Colorado after being up 17-0 with 6 minutes left in the third.
Yep.
Ooh, Nebraska is not back.
No.
Yeah, definitely not. And the way that game started off, me having Nebraska -4, I felt really good about that. And I was thinking that Nebraska looked pretty impressive, because like you said, their defense was actually playing well in the first half, which we didn't see too much of last year. So I didn't even see how the fourth quarter of that game went down. Like, I was stunned by the collapse because from what I had watched in the first, 3 quarters pretty much, I thought Nebraska was just going to cruise to that cover, and then they ended up blowing it in overtime. So
it was like consecutive chunk plays going back and forth that somehow ended up in it being tied. What was it, 31 going into overtime?
Yeah, well, it all started with I think Colorado was down 17-7 or something like that, and they ran like a 98-yard flea flicker for a touchdown, and that's what started it. So it was kind of nuts. Yeah. I think what's his name? Is it Montez for Colorado?
Steven Montez.
Yeah. He threw a beautiful pass to tie that game up in the corner of the end zone. So it was like a 30 or 35-yard pass, and brought that game to where it obviously, got it to where Nebraska blew the cover. We got the over and overtime. But, Nebraska, I agree, T. We talked about this when we did the Big Ten preview pod. We felt like there was talent there, but there was so much hype. We felt like we didn't know if they'd be ready for the moment yet. And I think they're showing that they're not quite ready for it. They're going to get their chance again when they play OSU coming up in a few weeks. But the way things are looking, I don't think they want to play a team like OSU right now. But
they definitely don't. At this point, OSU should go in there and win by 20 points, I think.
Yeah.
But Scott Frost, as much as we've talked him up, that's a bad loss for him personally. Just getting out coached in the second half, up 17-0, and having that come back. And so going into this season, one of the things that everyone was expecting out of Nebraska to be different is that they lost so many games last year that they should have won. And the expectation was with another year of experience and everything, Frost's second year, that they were going to be able to pull those games out, make the plays instead of using. And this was the exact same thing as last year where they just can't do that at the end of games.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good.
If you're a Nebraska fan, it's got to be pretty demoralizing. It's also, it was hilarious, seeing how many of their fans were there. And then Colorado storming the field at the end.
Yeah.
Storming the field with 10 fans.
Yeah.
That showed up to their own home.
Yeah, that's Addison, that's a good little transition as far as Frost getting outcoached in the second half, because I'm gonna add Willie Taggart again. He is back-to-back loser of the week. I know Florida State.
Eternal pod loser, Florida State and Willie Taggart.
Yeah, I know that they beat Louisiana Monroe, but Louisiana Monroe had to shank an extra point in overtime to lose the game. Once again, Florida State blowing a big lead, getting outplayed in the second half. Willie Taggart's days are numbered, and they should be. You shouldn't be getting just absolutely outcoached every single second half of a game like that. And they've got to go a different direction, right, guys? I mean, there's no way he should be the coach.
Yeah. Once again, they're blowing a lead to a vastly inferior team.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy. This year they had the week 1 debacle against Virginia Tech and pulled that up with a game that barely beat Samford in, and then this game was that game too, where they're just scraping by an inferior team in overtime.
Yeah.
It makes no sense that Florida State is at this level. And I would have fired him after winning that game.
Yeah, right.
That was an embarrassing win, and I thought that for them to win it on a missed extra point was kind of hilarious. It was one of the ugliest wins you can have, really.
Yeah, it absolutely atrocious. You guys got any more? Well, obviously there's an ultimate loser, I think, from this week, but
Addison, why don't you talk about UCLA? Why don't someone talk about UCLA and DTR before we get to the ultimate loser?
Yeah, I mean, look. UCLA, I like Chip Kelly, but I'm really, this team's young. Maybe we see it there. He's going to get another year, I think. I don't think he's on the hot seat. The administration knows that that's a big, splashy hire. They know how young the team is. I think they know. So maybe next year is the year that we see vast improvement. But I just think it's terrible management as a coach, as a CEO of a program, to start DTR. It makes no sense to me. The backups must not even be quarterbacks. I don't understand it. But to lose at UC, that's fine. Whatever. You were supposed to lose that game. I don't think they're supposed to lose the way that they did. But to lose at home to San Diego State, who is a solid Mountain West team, but you should be beating teams like that at home. And UCLA, Addison, we talked about this, guys, in the Pac-12 pod this year. We said that UCLA was a team that I think a lot of people were higher up on. I think there was a little bit of over money on their win total, but we pointed out this could be a team that starts 0-6 if things really don't go well in those first 2 games, because now they play Oklahoma. We'll get into that in a little bit, because that's a game I have a bet on. But yeah, Chip Kelly, UCLA, they look really bad again. It's going to be a long year for them. So, Addison, go ahead.
You needed that. You needed to beat San Diego State, because now you're looking at Oklahoma, Washington State, Arizona, and then you got Oregon State. Okay.
They could lose to Oregon State.
Yeah, they could. And then after that, you got at Stanford, Arizona State. I mean, it's
right. Find me a for sure win on that schedule. I don't know if there is one.
Not for sure right now, because Oregon State's maybe okay.
Yeah, they can put up some points. Yeah.
Is Chip not the coach that he was when he was at Oregon?
Well, I was going to say, Addison, that it's possible that there's so much film on what he's done now that seemed really innovative at first, that it's definitely possible that maybe he's not, and maybe he hasn't adjusted. I know he's very stubborn in his ways. We might be overvaluing him as a head coach now, and I think just time will tell.
I feel like you could be right there, and that just everyone else is caught up to him, and he's not like this crazy thing that no one had ever seen before now.
Well, to be honest, I think the guy I'm about to say was a much better recruiter, like leader overall. I felt the same way about Urban, to be honest, with like we're talking about just his offensive philosophy, nothing else that he does. I mean, he had to bring in Ryan Day. He had to bring in Kevin Wilson, like guys to enhance his offense that I felt like teams were catching up to, because Urban was one of the first guys that were running a spread. And when he was at Utah, it was this thing that we really hadn't seen before. Like him and Rich Rod, we hadn't seen these spread offenses, and I think a lot of these guys they didn't really adjust very well. And Chip could be the main guy like this. We're not seeing anything different from him. If he had a better quarterback, maybe we would be talking a little bit differently, because DTR is hot garbage. He's one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen. So
yeah, I actually think you're right about Urban too. That people caught up to it. Here's the thing about Urban though, is that he always got elite talent, and it was always based on power running.
Yeah, elite talent, elite coaching talent that he always convinced to come work. Like he's the ultimate salesman. He got Tom Herman, Ryan Day, Larry Johnson Jr. Larry Johnson Sr. from Penn State that he brought over a while back. I mean, he's the ultimate salesman, and he knows how to put the right guys around him. And maybe that's something that I remember when Chip Kelly was at Philadelphia in the NFL, and he was getting rid of like Shady and Deshaun Jackson. He's getting rid of all these guys because he said, like out loud publicly, my system works. I can put guys in it that aren't like these stud guys. And, at first the NFL didn't see anything like it. It looked really good with Vic and Foles, but then they got film on him and they caught up. He was dog shit at Philly at the end. He was horrific in San Francisco. He went back to college, where I think we can all agree that that's where he probably should be. But once again, I think it's possible that he's just being overly stubborn. He's not adjusting properly. He just thinks that DTR should be able to run his system. It doesn't matter who's there. And to be quite frank, I wouldn't be surprised if UCLA won 2 games this year. So maybe not even that. But yeah, Addison, go ahead and slay the next person or team or whoever.
Well, we got to mention Miami, who is now 0-2 for the first time since 1978.
Wow, yeah.
Yep.
What about go ahead.
I was going to say, and then I think there's one more.
Tennessee?
Yeah.
Clearly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Addison, why don't you crush Tennessee, and then I'll go into conspiracy corner on Tennessee.
That works, yeah.
All right, yeah, Tennessee is now 0-2 for the first time since 1988. Once again, it seems like a weekly thing that they give us something to just like make fun of them for. And the BYU game, just the end of that game, they're probably like 99% chance of winning that game. BYU had the ball on their own like 20 with about 20 seconds to go, no timeouts. They were down 3. And Tennessee just has a complete breakdown in the secondary. They leave the BYU guy wide open. He almost scores. They get down, spike the ball, kick field goal to go to overtime, and then they end up winning in overtime. So, yeah, Tennessee just blew a game that they absolutely should not have. But, I mean, this is what this program does now. And it's been going on for years, it seems like now. And yeah, it's pretty bad for Tennessee right now.
Yeah, if I went back through all of the pods that we've put up, I would say that Tennessee and Willie Taggart have the most amount of like awards for loser of the week. And Tennessee, what I've noticed with Jeremy Pruitt, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my opinion, but when I've seen some quotes from him the last couple of years, and just watching his demeanor at the end of that game, he reminds me a lot of Brian Kelly before Brian Kelly made like a good personal transformation. As far as I think Jeremy Pruitt doesn't take accountability as like the head coach. I hear him blaming players. He makes that ridiculous Titanic reference today about Yeah, Addison, go ahead and why don't you let our loyal subscribers know what Jeremy Pruitt thinks of his program right now?
Well, with their struggles, apparently some guys are wanting to transfer, get out of the program, and Jeremy Pruitt compared them to the mice running to the top of the Titanic while it was sinking. Which basically he's saying that Tennessee's program is a sinking ship.
Yeah, and he's right. I mean,
he is. And, sinking ships, it's kind of hard to, once they start going down, keep them from ending up at the bottom of the ocean. So I thought it was a pretty terrible analogy, but I thought it was fitting of Tennessee's program right now.
I mean, here's the thing with them is like when Butch Jones was there, he brought in some big recruiting classes. So it's not like you can't get talent in there, but they haven't found a good coach. I mean, they just haven't found a good coach. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Tolman, go ahead and let's
go.
You
guys set me up so good for this.
Yeah, go ahead and let's segue right into conspiracy corner.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this week's conspiracy corner is about Tennessee coaching, and it comes from one of my good friends who is a Tennessee alum, Tennessee fan, loves everything Tennessee football. He wears overalls on game days. That's how much he loves Tennessee football.
Are they checkered?
They're not checkered. They're not checkered, but he wears.
I was thinking they'd be like the orange and white checkered end zones.
No.
I do like their end zones. I'll give them that.
So he makes the comment. He made the comment to me. He thinks that Jeremy Pruitt was sent from Alabama to run the program further into the ground. That's what he said. That's what he thinks. So that's the conspiracy. That's the conspiracy theory, not coming from me, coming from him. But being the loving researcher that I am, I actually go looking to see if there's any if anybody else feels the same way. So I go to SEC fan boards, I go to Tennessee fan boards, and I find that there are a ridiculous number of Tennessee fans that actually believe that not only was Jeremy Pruitt sent from Alabama to run the program into the ground, that the program had already been run into the ground by Alabama, and Jeremy Pruitt was sent to, quote, send the Tennessee program to, like, the seventh layer of hell or something like that.
Jesus, yeah.
So that's what the fan base is thinking right now, that there's some conspiracy about Alabama and messing with Tennessee coaching. So then I go to look into this further, and I'm just looking at, okay, what's happened with Tennessee coaching since they were good, since we'll say since going back to when Phil Fulmer was dismissed. So okay, the last coach, Butch Jones, guys, where's he coaching now?
Alabama.
Coaching at Alabama. And why did he fall out of grace from Tennessee's program? Because he was really hard and he caused players to leave. So caused players to transfer out, then ends up at Alabama. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who was the Tennessee coach before that?
Derek Dooley.
Yeah, that's right. Derek Dooley.
Derek
right?
Dooley.
Yeah.
Okay. So where did Derek Dooley come from? Well, Derek Dooley is of the Nick Saban coaching tree. He was an assistant with him at both LSU and with the Dolphins, I believe.
Yeah, he was at Miami, yeah.
Okay. So now you've got Butch Jones that caused players to leave and went off to Alabama. You've got Derek Dooley. Did Nick Saban send him there to run the program into the ground? Okay. Who was the coach before that? For 1 year.
Oh, Lane. Yeah, Lane.
It was Lane.
Yeah. Oh, man, this is good, yeah.
Lane Kiffin fucked that up.
Wow, yeah.
Really pissed them off. Then several years ended up at Alabama, and I think those teams coached when Lane was the offensive coordinator at Alabama. Those teams destroyed Tennessee. So maybe there's a little something with Alabama and Alabama.
We said Saban's playing chess. These guys are playing checkers, man. That's
Hey, look.
If you go back even further than that, it's going the other way. Alabama fans say that Philip Fulmer is the guy who got Alabama put on probation. Like he ratted to the NCAA about some player Alabama had been paying, and then they got put on probation.
yeah.
There's a lot of espionage going on between these two programs.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting. Tulman, that's pretty good. Wow, Saban's he is just destroying Tennessee from within its own walls.
So basically all I'm saying is that, I mean, this is an obvious thing. Alabama just owns Tennessee right now, and that should be a good rivalry in college football.
Yeah, third Saturday in October, right? Yeah.
Yep, you are getting owned right now by Alabama and now everybody else because you're just like eternal losers on this pod.
Yeah. Well, that's a great little segment, and we should have more Conspiracy Corner segments coming up in the remainder of the year here. But let's go ahead now and we'll transition into the Week 3. I don't know if we're going to call these premier games. The slate this weekend is as bad as I've seen, but we have 2 games that we picked out that we felt a little bit interested in. We're going to start Friday night, 6 p.m. North Carolina, like we alluded to, surprise team under Mac Brown. 2-0, true freshman Sam Howell quarterback. He's looked like the real deal. They are going to Wake Forest, who has a really good quarterback in their own right. Jamie Newman, he's looked really good. They've got some playmakers around him. They're also 2-0. This is could be a fun game to watch. I think the total's around 64 right now. I think the line is, Wake is -3.5. Is that correct, guys?
Yeah, it's around there.
Okay.
I saw -3, -3.5 today.
Okay, so somewhere around there, yeah. Addison, I'll start with you. Your thoughts on, I guess, this game. I'm not looking for anything super in depth, but obviously you know the deal. Any thoughts you have on the game, these 2 programs so far to start the year, and then your lean or bet if you have one against the number.
All right, so UNC, interestingly, like we said earlier, they've actually played 2 decent teams, and credit to them, they won them both, but I don't think they were really the better team in either game.
Yeah.
Miami, I wish I had seen more of this game on Saturday, but it looks like Miami was pretty much able to do whatever they wanted on offense. So I don't know if it was a case of, Miami just not finishing drives or something, but Jaron Williams, and remember how bad Miami's O-line was against Florida. Jaron Williams went 30 for 39 against UNC for 309 yards. Yeah. So that's definitely a concern for UNC's D. Miami was also able to run the ball pretty well. DJ Dallas averaged 7.6 yards a carry, and then they had another running back who averaged 6 yards a carry. So I don't know. I think UNC got outplayed again, but still managed to win the game. Good for them, but eventually I think their luck is going to run out. We don't know a whole lot about Wake because they haven't really played anyone, but I do think Wake is the better team. Playing at home, I would go Wake, personally. Okay.
Tulman, before I get to you, I'm going to go real quick because I think you do have a bet on this. This one is kind of one that I'm leaning on. I am leaning Wake. North Carolina, I'll throw out some metrics for you guys. It's only 2 weeks, like we said, but they are offensively, as far as just their line play, they are 91st in the country in adjusted line yards, 100th on standard downs. They are 106th in stuff rate, 121st in sack rate. Teams are getting to Howell. I don't know if he's holding on to the ball too long. They're not really moving guys on the line of scrimmage. Now, Wake isn't necessarily moving people either, but they do have some dynamic playmakers. So, offensively, both lines, I think, are struggling quite a bit. What I was actually surprised by, which, like we said, Wake hasn't really played anybody yet. I thought their D-line was going to be able to really be moved around this year. That was the one concern I have as far as I have an over on their total, and I thought their D-line was going to be definitely, I think, the weakest part of their defense. But their numbers actually look pretty good so far, whereas North Carolina, again, 93rd defensive adjusted yards on the line, 110 on standard downs. They're creating some negative plays. They're getting to the quarterback at a decent clip, but I agree, Addison. I just think I don't know if it's smoke and mirrors. I think North Carolina's been a little lucky to hang in there. It's not that Wake is like a world beater, but I definitely lean Wake at home, just in like a 3-point game, and it might be a bet that I make. I'm not sure yet, but Dave, I think you actually did make the bet. You feel a little more confident than us, so why don't you give us your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I just feel like Tim Duncan is going to lock down Tyler Hansbrough and Wake State. I'm excited. It's fun. It's fun that we actually get to talk about them like in a football game.
Yeah, for sure.
So
this is a non-conference game.
Yeah. Okay. So we need to make fun of them for this. Okay. So this is not technically an ACC game, and I think this was the same last year, right? I'm pretty sure when they played.
It was a game like this last year too.
Yeah.
Gotta preserve that Tobacco Road rivalry.
I don't know. It's the weirdest thing ever. But yeah, Dave, go ahead, man.
Okay. So no, I did place a bet on Wake -3.5, and this was mostly a metrics-based bet. I looked into North Carolina's metrics, and Nikki already talked about it, but their yards per play, their overall efficiency, their kind of lack of game control and ball control bothered me a little bit. I know that they got the win in some tight matchups, but I just don't feel like their overall statistics, especially around efficiency, meant that they should have won those games. Then when I go ahead and looked at Wake, even though they hadn't played anybody, what I was really impressed with was passing efficiency by Jamie Newman. 6 touchdowns, no interceptions. They're averaging between 8 and 9 yards per play. And I feel that even though they haven't played anybody, the first week they were in a tight game against Utah State, and tight games, that's when turnovers can come out. He didn't do that. So I feel like UNC is getting a lot of love from the betting public just because of some high-profile, unexpected wins. But I think Wake is the better team, and they're going to put up a lot of points against North Carolina.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think those are reasonable thoughts. I could see Wake coming away with a pretty impressive victory. I will say I do like what I see out of Sam Howell for UNC. He looks pretty legit, but there's not a lot of talent on that team, especially on the line, especially on defense. Going to be an interesting game, though. I do think it's a game that probably could get into the 60s possibly, but we'll move on now to, I think, the game that is possibly even a little bit more interesting. We've got Iowa at Iowa State, battle for the Cy-Hawk Trophy. Guys, this is an interesting line because I think it's gone back and forth across that pick'em. As far as I think it opened, I'd have to double check. I'm pretty sure that. Do you guys have the current line right now? Because I don't have it in front of me.
I think it. Go ahead. I think currently Iowa -1.5. It might have opened like Iowa State -2 or something like that.
It for sure was Iowa State at least -1.5.
Yeah, I see.
It swung the other way.
Yeah, I see Iowa -1.5 right now. So pretty interesting that it swung that way. Addison, we'll I guess we'll just start with you again. That's fine. Your thoughts on this game and what you expect from both of these teams?
I've had questions about who are the skill guys going to be on both of these teams. Who makes plays besides the quarterbacks? I mean, I think both teams have good quarterbacks, good lines, but they need some guys to actually make plays. And both these defenses are pretty good. So this tends to be a low-scoring game. Every once in a while, there is the random 44 to 41 score, but usually it's pretty low-scoring. The last 10, it's actually gone under 7 times. I think it's going to be like that again. Last year, the game was 13-3, and I think it's going to be pretty defensive again. So I ended up taking the under already. Actually, it had already dropped quite a bit. I think it opened at 48, and I have it at 44.5. So Yeah, that's the kind of game I see. Defensive. If I had to, it's hard to say. Iowa's kind of taking control of this series as of late. Like, Iowa State used to hold their own even when they were pretty bad.
Yeah.
But lately it's been all Iowa. So I would say Iowa in a close defensive, probably ugly game.
Okay. Yeah, I see Corey booked Iowa -1. Tulman, before I get to you again, just because I know you do have a bet on this game, I see here official. I found it actually really surprising to me when I was going through these metrics again. Iowa against two, I think, subpar offensive teams. Their defensive line adjusted yards 74th, standard line yards 100th, passing down yards 78th, power success rate 97th, stuff rate 89th, sack rate 98th. I think that we haven't seen it yet because we haven't seen them against a good team. But losing all the linemen that they did, and I know we talk about Epinesa or whatever, he's a freak. But I think losing the rest of their starting line like they did from last year, that looks like that could be a bigger deal than what we think moving forward. Now, Stanley's looked pretty good. Obviously, he's been protected by those 2 NFL tackles. They've had some guys make some plays against, obviously, not as good teams. They played Miami, Ohio, and then Rutgers. But there could be an edge for Iowa State, O-line versus D-line. I think that Iowa State's O-line is supposed to be pretty darn respectable this year. Like you said, Addison, I think we're going to find out about their playmakers, though. They didn't play well in their first game. They almost got upset by, who was it? Like FCS somebody, right?
Northern Iowa, right?
Or Northern Iowa, right. So I don't know if they were looking ahead to this game or what happened, but I expect to see more out of them. But I think there could be a little edge in there. I actually would lean Iowa State just because that worries me. I'm not going to have a play on this game. It's just too close for me. I could see it going any which way. But Dave, you seem to feel a little more confident in, I believe it was Iowa State I saw on the
No,
dock.
Iowa.
You have Iowa. Yeah. Go ahead.
I got Iowa. I got Iowa -1.5.
Okay.
But going back to our Big 12 preview, I was not as high on Iowa State as you guys.
Okay.
My biggest concern with Iowa State was you've got to replace some pretty important skill guys that made your freshman quarterback last year look pretty good.
Yeah.
And look, I like Brock Purdy, but I just don't see him having the security blanket of a David Montgomery that you can hand the ball off to 30 times a game and control the game.
Sure.
So you don't have a Hakeem Butler that you can throw it up to and bail you out when you can't get the run game going.
Yeah.
So I see, look, it's fair that Iowa hasn't played anybody. It's fair that we don't really know what we're getting from their defense this year, but I'm just going to believe in what I thought at the beginning of the year, that Iowa State is going to have trouble to score points this year, and that Iowa's defense is indeed pretty good. So I favor Iowa, and that's why I put the bet on.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm interested just because I think we got a couple guys that feel more confident in Iowa. I feel a little more confident in Iowa State, I think. So I think that's an interesting one that we'll be talking about kind of within our group on Saturday. But we'll go ahead and move on now to the last segment. We're going to talk about some of our bets and leans for the week. As always, if you guys haven't seen the pod before, we will update the bets throughout the week as we add them in the description box below the video. So make sure that, if you're leaning one way or the other, you go to that box, like I said, and especially leading up to Saturday, because we add them as we go. This video likely is going to be uploaded I usually try to get up by Tuesday at the latest. So, but yes, so I know that we do have some early bets and leans here. Addison, I guess what we'll do, guys, is just like last time. We don't need to list quite everything because we are running just slightly over an hour now. But why don't you give like one or two that you feel pretty confident about, and let the loyal subscribers know why you're leaning that way or why you did make the bet already.
All right. Well, I've got you and I have one of the same, so I'll just
I see that. Yeah, go with that one. That's fine.
Maryland's -6.5. Do you remember what it opened at?
Yeah, it was 4.5.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought it was like 4 or something.
Yeah.
So it does seem fishy, doesn't it? But,
It does. I'm taking the bait.
Last year it did too. After Maryland beat Texas, they had a actually, I'll look at what it was. Oh, it was actually 15 last year, so it wasn't. But I think Maryland's just a lot better than they were last year, like a lot better. And with the coaching situation, it's not dysfunctional like it was last year. So, and that line is still going up too. It's at 8, and I would be surprised if it keeps going higher. So, getting it below 7, Florida Atlantic -3. They're at Ball State. Obviously, Florida Atlantic's gotten destroyed 2 games, but they're against 2 pretty good teams. So I don't really put any stock in that as far as what Florida Atlantic's going to be like the rest of their season when they're playing much worse teams.
Sure.
So Ball State was awful last year. So I think Florida Atlantic -3 is a pretty good play.
Okay.
I mentioned the Iowa under already, so the last thing I have is Kentucky +8.5. A lot of people are going to be thinking Florida, especially with what's his name, the quarterback out for Kentucky.
Yeah. Shit, I don't remember. Terry.
Terry Wilson.
Yeah.
Yeah, Terry. I keep forgetting what his name is, but that line started at 9, and it's been going down. And you know that the public isn't betting on Kentucky.
Yeah,
so
it is interesting. Yeah.
That this series has been pretty close lately. The games have been close, and Kentucky hasn't been all that great a few of those years. So it's just something about this series. Like under Stoops, they played Florida tough. So hopefully that continues.
Stoops seems to have this disdain for Florida. It's really strange. Because it's interesting. Dave, I'm going to go to you next, actually, because
we can debate this.
Yeah, because your best bet is the opposite of Addison. So I'm curious to see your thoughts. I know that Corey's big on Florida. It might be his best bet as well. So it's interesting to me. Why don't you go ahead and give the positive side for Florida?
So I really, really like Florida's defensive line and their defensive ends. And you're going to put that up against a unproven true freshman quarterback. I'm not even sure if this guy's taken a snap yet.
I think it's the transfer from Troy who's going to play.
Okay.
Sawyer Smith.
Transfer.
Yeah.
Sawyer Smith. Okay, transfer from Troy. Okay. I'm not seeing it. I am struggling to see how Kentucky is going to score on Florida. And as much as I don't like Felipe Franks, this could be a 10-0 game, and I'll be fine with that. I think that Kentucky has faced a couple of back teams start the year off, and they've given up like at least 17, 20 points in those games. So Kentucky defense down a little bit. Their starting quarterback out, and I really like Florida's defensive line and pass rush. So I go Florida, and I feel good about it.
Okay. Give me like 1 or 2 more that you feel pretty good about.
Oh, I like the Pirate going down to Houston -8.
Nice.
I think Pirate back in Texas. Houston's defense is trash, and Pirate's angry. He's gonna put up a ton of points in the Lions Stadium. I might actually go to that game and
Nice.
Watch the Pirate line it up.
Nice. Okay, well, yeah, I will. I'm gonna rattle these off real quick. So I like Maryland, like Addison, obviously. It is kind of a stinky line. I'm taking the bait though. I'm not gonna overthink it. I think Maryland's speed on offense is gonna be too much for Temple to keep up with. Maryland does have Penn State at home, but that's gonna be 2 weeks from now. So that could be that look-ahead factor could be worked into the line, and that could be why it's lower. But Maryland under a touchdown right now, I mean, they're on fire the first 2 weeks of the year. I think Temple is okay. I don't think they're as good as maybe Syracuse even. So I expect Maryland to show up and win by, I would say, more like 10-14 is what I think is going to happen. But I broke a rule. I do not try to bet Ohio State as an Ohio State fan. I took Ohio State -14 at Indiana. This one is just one unit. It's not like an overly confident thing. Indiana has covered against OSU, I think, 6 of like the last 7. But I think Indiana's been struggling with speed the last couple of years. I really like the focus of this OSU team. I think the defensive line is going to be a real problem for Indiana's offensive line. I'm expecting, I know it's a nooner, I know it's in Bloomington, but I think if OSU wants to be there, then this game is possibly going to be Ohio State by 3, 4, as many touchdowns as they want. It's just a question of them showing up. Next bet real quick. So this line's not going to be available when this video goes up. I got Oklahoma minus 17.5 on Sunday afternoon. I saw that it opened at 17 against UCLA. I couldn't click the bet slip button. I couldn't click it fast enough. I put many units on this game. This would be my best bet, but I know this line is up to like 22.5 now. I expect it to possibly blow through 24 even. It's just such a bad line in my opinion. UCLA, we've covered that team a little bit. They can't stop a soul. DTR is trash. I really expect Oklahoma to put up 50 on UCLA. I don't really think UCLA gets really into the 30s, to be honest. The only way they do is if Oklahoma's just giving them the ball back again after they've scored like their 8th touchdown or 10th touchdown, 11th touchdown. So I sound like the ultimate pro here with 3 road faves, but I do feel good, really good about Oklahoma. I have so many more units on them than I do on Maryland or Ohio State. One that I am going to list as I think my best bet for the week. I don't feel as confident about anything else. I've got Air Force plus 3.5 at Colorado. So here are the reasons. Colorado just came off a very emotional win against Nebraska. Air Force is a team that I think can take advantage of Colorado's really atrocious defensive line and front 7 play. When I went through the metrics, Colorado is in the triple digits in everything for defensive line play. This is supposed to be one of Air Force's better teams in a while. They bring back quite a bit on offense and defense. I think this is a situation where you have Colorado off an emotional high. I don't know if they're really looking ahead to Arizona State, but they do start Pac-12 play the next week. This used to be a game that was played every year from, I think, for a good 30 years. Obviously, Air Force down in Colorado Springs, Colorado up in Boulder. I actually think Air Force is going to go in there and win this game on the field. I know the service academies, they give, especially a lot of these undisciplined, weaker, defensive units, a lot of trouble. I like Air Force to go in there and to win this game. It's going to be my best bet for the week. So anything else you guys want to add before we wrap it up here? Addison, why don't you, if you have anything, and then I'll let Dave go after you.
I just want to pose a question. How do you feel about Florida State plus 7.5 at Virginia?
Yeah, Corey asked me that. The trend, I would tell a bettor right now is to look at Virginia's second half because I just know they're gonna outcoach and outplay Florida State in the second half. The thing is,
how bad Florida State is right now.
Yeah, it is interesting though because I don't think Virginia's really more talented than Florida State, but it's going to be a pass for me because I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like one of those things that in the past we would have been baited into taking Florida State on.
We were last year a lot.
We know how bad Willie Taggart is, and I could actually see them getting smoked.
Yeah, it's very possible. I mean, I don't know, Dave. Do you have any thoughts on that line at all?
I would not bet Florida State. If I did bet this game, I'd go Virginia, but I'd probably stay away just because, I don't know. I just think at some point they're going to have some pride and win a game like that.
Yeah. Dave, any final thoughts?
Nope.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, I got final thoughts.
Okay.
Fun weekend of football in Houston. We got Washington State on a neutral field against Houston in Reliance Stadium, and then on Friday night, and then on Saturday night we got Texas on a neutral field against Rice. So
nice.
Maybe a couple nice college games to go to in the Reliance or NRG Stadium.
Very nice. I like it. So we've got Dave's best bet's gonna be Florida minus 8.5 at Kentucky. I've got Air Force plus 3.5 at Colorado. Addison, which one of those of yours do you feel the most confident about right now? Or do you have like
the Iowa under.
the under? Okay, yeah, I thought that might have been your
That's
best
the
one.
first bet I made.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So we got some good ones up for you guys to start. Like I said, check throughout the week in the description box below. It'll have our up-to-date records for the year, which aren't great, but we've been hammering those best bets. We've been crushing units-wise, and I think we've got some pretty good plays this week. So tune in next week when we recap, everything we talked about this week, and we'll. I think next week's pod is going to be fun because we got a lot more. I think like premier games. We've got. I think Notre Dame, Georgia is on the docket. We've got like Auburn, A&M. I think there's like 4 or 5 possibly ranked versus ranked matchups, so it should be a little more interesting. But
and let's hope we don't have as many teams to crush next week like we did this week.
Hopefully, I kind of
Right?
I enjoy it with Tennessee and Florida State, but and Michigan especially. But yeah.
Tennessee loses to Chattanooga, that'll be something.
Oh boy, yeah. Just can we say just cancel the program at that point? Like, I mean, that's pretty bad. But yeah. So thanks for watching. Tune in next time.